Okay then, so yeah, I'm gonna make a video. Why am I making videos? I've been thinking about it for a long time, and the thought of doing it made me scared of looking stupid, that stuff again. Someone said to me the other day, I've got a face for radio. There it is. Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of challenge that a bit, and I did some stuff with Marcus Morris PT. Made a video to kind of promote that the other week, and yeah, it feels like something I should perhaps do. So let people get to see a little bit more of who I am, as it were, rather than just Facebook posts and writing. I want to talk about different topics, a lot of which I'm far from an expert. I want to talk about just opinions and thoughts and ideas around recovery, around, I suppose, around mental health, around getting better, being better, just around everything really. I reckon there's 1,000,001 topics, and I think of stuff all the time, and I think, oh, I could make quite a good video about that. So anyway, I'm rambling, so here I am, first one. What I'm going to do it about today is about a book I was featured in, Billy and Roland it's called. There's me on the front in a slightly weird out of focus graphic, and then there's some blocks of flats in the background, although that's a bit of a blag, because I didn't actually live in them flats. Those are some flats from over, I think they were in Manchester, but they're not dissimilar to some flats I used to live in round about the time that this book was being put together. Yeah, so when this book was written, when I was still using drugs, and I used to go to a drug service in Ashton-under-Lyne near West End Flats, the flats that those are supposed to represent in Ashton, and I used to go to a drug service there, and a lot of the time I had a flat in Duckingfield at the time, and a lot of the time I was just going to the drug service to engage in groups, go on groups. Half the time I was just there to meet somebody, people to hook up with, to go and score drugs. You know, if I had no money or a bit of money, I would hope to hook up with someone there who would have money or an idea of how to get money, and we would score. Sometimes I was going there because I wanted to not use drugs, or not necessarily not use, but sometimes I was going there and I wasn't necessarily going to get drugs, but I was going there to kill time, to get a free cup of tea and a few biscuits and just occupy myself really. Used to do various groups there. Motivation to change being one of them that I remember. Anyway, yeah, so I used to be involved in a few bits and bobs there. And one day a bloke came in, and he was an author, the author of this book, a chap called Len Grant. He did a talk about, he's like, I suppose you'd call him a social commentator. He was doing a talk about some of his work, one of them being a piece around Ancoats in Manchester. And he was talking about a housing estate in Ancoats where it was rough. They were going to regenerate it and turn it into a place called New Islington, which Ancoats is Ancoats to me, but anyway, and he was talking about an old lady who lived there, who he'd interviewed and he'd taken photographs of, and she was talking about how there was these gangs of drug dealers outside her house all the time, and I related to this bloke, Len, who was doing the presentation and telling us about this, I was saying, well, I used to score there a lot. This place in Ancoats, it was mad. Back then, there used to be a pub called the Cob of Coal, and near the Cob of Coal, there was like a housing estate, and in this housing estate was like a little triangle, like squares in you know, that you can only get to on foot. They were like little pedestrianised squares that were probably designed to be communal areas for these masonettes and flats and stuff, and they were designed to have bits of gardens in and stuff, but it were a bit rough, and it was weird. You used to go on to the estate to score, and it was well known as a place to score heroin and crack, and you used to go on there to score, and it was like, you know, when you see these stereotypical Middle Eastern markets where you've got people saying, buy off me, it was like that. You know, you had all like 14, 15, 16, whatever year old kids with balaclavas on and hats on and the faces covered, trying to sell you crack and heroin and all the rest of it. And they were usually kids, younger people, and then stood around the edges of the square would be like meatheads, big blokes who were basically security for these young lads who were selling for people, obviously. Anyway, I digress. But I told Len about this, you know, how I used to go to this estate that he was talking about, and his talk progressed, and he was saying he was basically looking for a heroin addict or a drug addict to follow round and be part of this book, and I volunteered. My motivation for volunteering, I don't really know. I mean, it was a long time ago, really. Don't know, just seemed kind of cool, I guess. I can't really remember and being entirely honest about it, but I agreed to do it. So Len arranged to meet me various times, and he followed me around on and off for a couple of years. Whilst I was using heroin and addict and crack and all the rest of what I used to use at the time. And he would meet up, and you know, he followed me. He came with me when I went to I suppose you'd call it a soup kitchen, you know, a place where these religious folk used to put food on. You know, he came there with me. There's a picture of it here in the book, actually. I'll find it. He came with me there, and you know, he took photographs, and he was basically trying to figure out what it was like to be me, really, and be a drug addict. Yeah, there's a picture of it. So there's yours truly, looking half dead, about to tuck into a big plate of sausage, mash, peas and gravy by the looks of things. Yeah, I guess, and that, you know, seeing that picture, that brings me on to kind of some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. You know, how it felt to be part of this book. Yeah, it was. Well, I suppose felt to be part of it. I don't really remember specifically. Len was quite cool. He was a nice bloke. You know, he met me, went to the church with me. Met me one day when I was cashing my gyro or my book or whatever it was at the time. It was actually them plastic post office cards. It was one of them, and you know, he came with me to the post office, and he documents that in the book. He talks about coming to the post office with me, and then I went off to the shop to buy baccy and a nourishment shake, and then I went scoring, and I let him come to the phone box with me when I scored, and take photographs of me in the phone box. Then I made him wait round the corner because I didn't want to lead him to my drug dealer, as it were. And I went and scored, and then we went back to my flat, and he took photographs of me injecting heroin and taking heroin, and you know, as part of him documenting a bit of the journey for the book, really. When it came to it, I actually asked him to not use the photographs of me injecting. The time I asked him, I was in rehab at the time, and I felt that actual pictures of me injecting. I thought that might be a little bit much for my family to see. Although to be fair, I mean, there's pictures of me with the needle in my hand, so it wouldn't have made a ton of difference really. But anyway, I asked him not to use those pictures, and he was respectful in that. Yeah, when I was in detox, he came and visited me there, and he photographed me in detox, and he came and visited me in rehab, and he photographed me there. Like I say, he was a cool bloke. He is a cool bloke. You know, he talks in the book about a time. You know, he from time to time, I'd spend all my money on drugs, as you know, as I did. So from time to time, he would help me out. He would, like, I remember him taking me to Asda and spending about a tenner on shopping, getting shopping for me. I guess it was one of them. He didn't want to give me a tenner because that's a bag in it. But he gave me, he bought me some shopping, and he bought me a packet of baccy, and yeah. So he's a decent bloke. And then the book, you know, when I was in rehab, and I got clean, I suppose I started to think more about what potential impacts of the book. On one hand, I thought it might really help someone. You know, they might see someone who was a really at times a desperate, lonely addict who couldn't or didn't feel like they could stop using, and then they'd see pictures of me and descriptions of me clean and starting to build a life, starting to recover. So I had hopes for the book really helping people, but also I'd started to learn all this stuff in rehab. It was based around 12-step, and there was a lot of talk about ego, you know, being egotistical, being dangerous for the addict. Excuse the term, but so I was like, well, I quite want this book to help people, but I don't want to be egotistical. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to condescend to people. I just, you know, so I had mixed feelings about it. And when the book was published, I remember I went to like a launch of it when there was other people there, and I didn't speak at the launch of it, but I helped out. You know, I basically stood on a table and people could buy copies of the book, and so I was like selling copies of the book for Len whilst he was schmoozing with people and doing his talk and all the rest of it. And there was the other two people who were in the book, Alan and Barbara, they were there, and people, you know, I remember a couple of people saying, "Oh, will you sign the book to me?" And it felt weird, it felt uncomfortable. Obviously a bit of me was like, oh, you know, it felt kind of nice to be recognised, but also sign a book about being a drug addict, it was weird. And I suppose that kind of illustrates a lot of the feelings I had about it. You know, I felt like I should be proud of myself, but not too proud. Yeah. The book was published and I didn't show it to anyone. Len gave me a box of probably 20 copies of it, and I just hid them away. I didn't really give them to anyone because I felt a little bit embarrassed, a little bit ashamed of you know, the person I'd been, the addict I'd been, you know. And then over time I've kind of got over that, you know. I've got to the point where I think, oh, fuck 'em, it doesn't matter whether it's ego or not, you know, it's something I've done, and I'm going to have a go. You know, it's like the speaking thing. I was afraid of being judged harshly by people I used to knock around with from the fellowships, and I was afraid of being viewed as being arrogant and all the rest of it. But you know, it's something I've wanted to do, something I've dreamed of having the courage to do, and now I'm doing it, and it might turn out to be a mistake, but right now it doesn't feel that way. So I'm going for it. You know, I've lived long enough afraid of sticking my head above the parapet, and afraid of being judged, and afraid of being a failure. And what I've learned is when I face them fears, I actually do alright, and I get, not all the time, but I sometimes get some really positive outcomes out of it. So here I am. Yeah, video's 15 minutes long. People aren't going to watch 15 minutes worth of video. Yeah. Anyway, if you're interested in the book, it's called Billy and Roland. Billy was the street name or the nickname I used to use. I used to have it tattooed on my hand there. You can't actually see it very well, but if I pinch my hand there, you can see where I had it lasered off. Just about. You see a bit of paleness there where I had my tattoo lasered off my hands. So I used to be called Billy, and then when I was in detox I said to Len, I said, will you call me by my real name, Roland? I started thinking I should start to be me rather than this persona I'd created throughout my addiction and throughout my youth. Hence the book being named Billy and Roland. As I said though, it's not just about me, it's also about a chap called Alan, an alcoholic, and he was homeless at the time as well, or he would sleep out, you know, rough a lot of the time, not all the time I think. And it was also about a lady called Barbara who'd fled, I believe it was Zimbabwe. You know, she was like a political refugee. She was in danger if she'd have stayed there. Yeah, it was about the three of us. It's quite a good book. Have a look at it. You know, I look at it and I'm obviously dramatically different. I mean, for a start, I weigh about 4 or 5 stone more than I did in the book. And obviously I've come a fair way. It's 10 years, just over 10 years since I last used drugs or alcohol. Yeah, so, you know, there it is. End of ramble, really. If you want me to do any specific videos, or if you want to ask me any questions, you could post comments, or you could leave comments, or you could message me, whatever you like. I can't promise I will do it, but we'll have a chat about whatever it is. And I'm going to try and be more concise and not take 17.5 minutes in future. Alright, cool.